My name is Felix, and I want to start by telling you that I am not a person who frightens easily. I travel for work approximately 40 weeks a year. I have stayed in over 200 hotels across 18 states. I have stayed in places that were genuinely unpleasant, rooms with mold, rooms with insects, rooms where the lock on the door felt like a suggestion rather than a guarantee. I know what hotels are. I know their sounds, their rhythms, the specific quality of the silence in a hotel hallway at 2 in the morning. I am comfortable in the impersonal anonymity of these spaces in a way that most people are not. I say this because what happened on a Wednesday night in a mid-range business hotel in western Pennsylvania is something I have never been able to explain, and I have tried harder than most people would. I checked in around 7 in the evening after a long drive from Columbus. The hotel was unremarkable, 3 floors, maybe 60 rooms, the kind of place that exists to serve highway travelers and business visitors to a town that doesn't otherwise have a reason to attract them. The lobby had the old red carpet and the faint institutional smell that I have come to associate with hotels that were nice in 1987 and have been coasting on that niceness ever since. The woman at the front desk was pleasant and efficient and gave me a room on the 3rd floor without incident. The room was standard. Small bed, desk, television, bathroom with a shower that had decent pressure. I threw my bag on the chair, checked my email, ordered a sandwich from the place across the street, and spent the evening watching television and reviewing notes for the next day's meeting. By 10:30 I had turned off the lights and was asleep. I woke at 1:47 a.m. I know the time precisely because I checked my phone immediately after waking, the way I always do when something pulls me out of sleep and I can't identify what it was. The room was completely dark except for the thin bar of hallway light under the door. I lay still and listened. The hotel was quiet. Whatever had woken me was gone. I was about to put the phone down when I heard it. A sound from the direction of the door, a soft sliding, like paper moving across carpet. Barely audible. I sat up. At the bottom of the door, just visible in the thin strip of light from the hallway, something white was protruding slightly into the room. I got up and crossed to the door and crouched down. It was a folded piece of paper, the kind torn from a notepad. I picked it up and turned on the bedside lamp. The handwriting was uneven, loose and slightly tilted, the way writing looks when someone is doing it quickly or under stress. The note said that someone in the hotel was watching me. Not threatening, just informational. Matter of fact in a way that was somehow worse than a threat. I stood in the middle of the room holding this piece of paper and processed what I was looking at. My first thought was a prank. A bored employee, a misdelivered note, something misdirected. I went to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty in both directions. I listened for footsteps. Nothing. The hotel was completely silent. I put the chain lock on the door and sat on the bed with my back against the headboard. I turned the note over, looking for more writing. Nothing on the back. I looked at the handwriting again. It was not the handwriting of someone composing a joke. It was tight and deliberate in its irregularity, like someone trying to control a hand that wasn't cooperating. I told myself that the rational thing was to call the front desk. I also thought about the possibility that whoever was on the other side of that desk was the one who had slid the note under my door. The thought arrived without warning, and once it arrived I could not dismiss it. I had been given a room on the 3rd floor of an otherwise nearly empty hotel. The hallway had felt strange when I walked it, not quiet in the way of a late night, but quiet in the way of a space that was specifically and deliberately empty. I decided to wait. If nothing else happened, I would take it to the front desk in the morning and let the manager explain it. I sat with the lamp on for 20 minutes. The hotel remained silent. I began to think about the possibility that I had overreacted. Then the second note came. The sliding sound was slower this time. More deliberate. As if whoever was pushing it through was doing it carefully, taking their time. I was already on my feet before it had fully cleared the gap under the door. I picked it up. The second note said the person had been inside my room earlier that day, before I arrived. It said they'd like to watch people sleep in this hotel. The handwriting was shakier than the first, not deteriorating, but changed. Like a different emotional state had found its way into the strokes. I stood in the center of the room for a long moment. Then I checked everything again, under the bed, inside the closet, behind the shower curtain. I already knew the room was empty. I had checked when I arrived, out of habit, the way I always check. But I checked again anyway, because the note was sitting in my hand and it said that someone had been in this room and the note had come from somewhere. The room was empty. The window was latched. The closet was clear. I sat back on the bed and thought about the broken window latch the morning staff would later discover. I did not know about the latch yet. I only knew that the note was in my hand and the room was empty and someone was in the hallway at 2 in the morning doing this. I decided that if a third note came I would leave the room immediately. I sat with the lamp on and watched the bottom of the door and tried to control my breathing. Every sound in the building registered sharply. The ice machine somewhere down the hall. A door opening and closing on a lower floor. The particular settling sound of a building at night that is perfectly ordinary and that I had heard in hundreds of hotels and that on this particular night sounded like the footsteps of someone moving carefully through a space they knew well. 30 minutes passed. I started to believe it was over. Then the third note came. Slower than the second. A single finger pushing it through the gap with a kind of patience that was worse than urgency would have been. I did not read it immediately. I picked it up and put it in my pocket without looking at it and put on my shoes and grabbed my bag and my phone and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. I took the chain off the door and opened it and looked both directions. Nothing. I walked quickly to the stairs, not the elevator, the stairs, and went down to the lobby. The employee at the front desk was a young man who looked half asleep. When I told him what had happened, he looked at me with the expression people use when they are trying to assess whether to take something seriously. I put the first 2 notes on the counter. He read them. His expression changed. He gave me a different room on the first floor and called his manager. I sat in the new room with the chain on and read the third note. It said the person was inside my room again. I had checked everything. There was no one there. The window latch, they discovered the next morning, had been broken in a way that looked recent, forced from outside, suggesting the window had been used as an access point before I arrived and possibly again during the night. No cameras caught anyone near my room. The manager apologized and refunded my stay. The police took a report and investigated and found nothing. What I think about now is the pacing of the notes. The first one informational. The second one more personal, more specific about what he had done. The third one, the one he wanted me to read while I was still in the room, claiming to be inside with me. Whether it was true, whether he had come back in through the window while I was sitting on the bed watching the door, whether the room I was so certain was empty contained something I hadn't found. I still travel 40 weeks a year. I still stay in hotels in towns I don't know. But I check the window latches now, every window, every room, before I put my bag down. And when a hotel hallway feels specifically and deliberately empty, I pay attention to that feeling. I paid attention too late that night. But I paid attention. My name is Vera and I was 31 years old when this happened, on a solo business trip to a conference in Richmond, Virginia. I want to give you some context about who I am because it is relevant. I have been traveling alone for work since I was 26. I have developed, over those 5 years, a specific set of habits that I maintain in every hotel I stay in, habits that my colleagues find excessive and I have never been willing to stop because they have always made logical sense to me. I check the room when I arrive. I put the chain lock on before I sleep. I never open the door without looking through the peephole first. I keep my phone on the nightstand with the emergency dial screen already pulled up. I do these things because I am a woman traveling alone and because the world is what it is. I have never had a reason to regret doing them. On this particular trip I arrived at the hotel in the early afternoon and checked into a room on the 4th floor. Standard room, nothing unusual. I did my arrival check, confirmed the room was clear, noted that the door's chain lock was intact and functional. I attended the first day of the conference, returned to the hotel around 9 in the evening, ordered room service, and was in bed by 11. I woke at 12:40 a.m. I woke because of a sound I identified immediately, the specific sound of a door handle being tested. Not turned aggressively, not knocked. Tested. The slow, careful pressure of someone checking whether a door is locked without wanting to make noise. The handle moves slightly, held under pressure for 2 or 3 seconds, then released. I did not move. I lay in bed and looked at the door across the dark room and waited. 30 seconds passed. Then the sound came again, and this time it was different. Not the handle. A smaller, more precise sound. Metal on metal, very slight. The sound of a key being inserted into a keyhole. I want to be careful here about what I know and what I inferred. What I know is that I heard a sound consistent with a key being inserted into the lock of my hotel room door at 12:40 in the morning. What I know is that it was followed by a very slight resistance in the door, not opening, just the door moving fractionally in its frame as pressure was applied to it from outside. And what I know is that my chain lock was engaged, which meant that even if someone had a key that functioned, the door would not have opened. The door pushed gently. Once, then stopped. The sliver of hallway light at the frame was visible for a moment, a gap that wasn't there when the door was fully seated, and then it was gone. The door closed softly. Footsteps, barely audible, moving away down the hall. I lay completely still for a long time. Then I called the front desk. The night manager came up himself within 10 minutes. I told him what I had heard. He was professional and took it seriously, which I appreciated. He checked the hallway, checked the stairwell doors at both ends of my floor, and came back and told me there was no one visible on the floor. He offered to move me to a different room or to have security monitor the hallway. I asked him who had access to a key for my room. He said housekeeping staff with master keys, management, and front desk personnel who could generate a new key card if a guest reported losing theirs. I asked him to change my room. He moved me 2 floors down, to the second floor, and generated a new key card and confirmed that my previous room's keys had been deactivated. I slept for what remained of the night with the chain on and a desk chair wedged against the door. In the morning I attended the second day of the conference and returned to the hotel in the late afternoon. The manager found me in the lobby. He looked uncomfortable in a specific way, the way people look when they have information they don't want to give you. He told me that one of the housekeeping staff, a woman who worked night shift cleaning on the upper floors, had not come in for the past week. She had simply stopped showing up. They had been unable to reach her. He told me, carefully, that she had not returned her master key set when she stopped coming in. I want to be precise about what this meant. A woman with a master key that could open every room in the hotel had disappeared without returning those keys a week before my stay. Someone had come to my door at 12:40 in the morning with a key that functioned in my lock. The chain held. I think about the chain a lot. I think about the nights I have stayed in hotels and been too tired to put the chain on. The nights I have told myself it was unnecessary because the door was locked. I think about every room I have ever checked into and how many of them I have checked for the chain without actually testing whether it worked. I test them now. Every room, every chain, every stay. I pull it firmly after I engage it to confirm it holds. My colleagues think I am paranoid. The missing housekeeper was never found, as far as I was told. The hotel handled it the way hotels handle things they don't want to become public, quietly, with apologies, with a refund for my final night. I filed a police report. I don't know what came of it. What I know is that someone had a working key to my room. What I know is that they tried to open the door and found the chain. What I know is they went away when the chain held. I put the chain on every single night. Every hotel, every room, every stay. It held once when it needed to. My name is Jonah and I was 28 when this happened on a weekend trip to New Jersey that I had taken purely because I needed to get out of my apartment and away from my life for 48 hours. That sounds dramatic, but it was a simple thing, a period of work stress and personal stress that had combined into the particular kind of exhaustion that requires physical relocation to address. I booked a cheap hotel near a hiking trail I had read about, threw a bag together on a Friday afternoon, and drove 3 hours north. The hotel was not remarkable. 2 floors, highway adjacent, the smell of industrial cleaning products, and the faint memory of cigarettes that hotels like this never fully lose. I checked in around 7 in the evening, ate snacks in my room, and was asleep by 9:30. I woke at some point past midnight. I did not know the time immediately because I was disoriented in the way you were in an unfamiliar room in the dark. What I registered first was a sound, a soft, slow sliding on the carpet. I lay still and identified the direction. The closet. The closet was to my left, between the bed and the bathroom, with a bifold door that I had left standing open when I arrived. The sound stopped. I told myself it was the building settling, the air conditioner, the sort of ambient noises that populate unfamiliar spaces and acquire significance only because of the darkness and the strangeness of the place. I lay still for another minute. The room was quiet. Then I heard breathing. It was distinct from the ambient sounds of the room in the way that breathing always is. There is something immediately biological about it that the brain identifies before the conscious mind processes what it means. Slow and slightly effortful. Not labored, but controlled. The breathing of someone trying to be quiet. It was coming from the closet. I did not turn on the light immediately. I stayed flat and processed what I was hearing and tried to find an alternative explanation. The air conditioner was on the opposite wall. The vent above the closet was a return vent, not a supply vent, so it was not pushing air with enough force to create that sound. I had left the closet door open and I had checked the closet when I arrived, as I always did, and it had been empty. I reached slowly for my phone on the nightstand. I turned on the flashlight and pointed it at the closet. The bifold door was slightly closed. Not fully, maybe 4 inches of movement from where I had left it standing open. Not enough to see clearly into the space behind it. Enough that the angle had changed. The breathing stopped the moment the light hit the closet. Stopped completely and immediately. As if whoever was making the sound understood that stopping was the correct response to light. I was out of bed and at the door in approximately 3 seconds. I did not go to the closet. I grabbed my shoes and my phone and my wallet from the nightstand, did not take the time to put the shoes on, and went into the hallway. The hallway was empty. Fluorescent lights, closed doors, the fire exit sign at the far end. I stood there in my socks for a moment and then went to the staircase and down to the lobby. The woman at the front desk was tired and initially skeptical in the polite way of someone who has dealt with guests who think they hear things. I told her specifically what I had heard, the breathing, the closet door. She became less skeptical. She came upstairs with me. When we entered the room, the closet was standing fully open. The room was empty. She checked under the bed, behind the curtains, in the bathroom. Nothing. She was thorough and professional, and at the end of the check she said, in the careful tone of someone choosing words precisely, that she thought I should move to a different room. She gave me a room on the other end of the 2nd floor. I took it and moved my things and engaged the chain lock and did not sleep again until I had wedged the desk chair under the door handle as an additional measure. The chair against the door is something I had read about and never done before that night. I slept for a few hours and woke early. The hiking trail was everything the article had said it would be. I went anyway, because I had driven 3 hours and I was not going to let a bad night take the day too. When I came back and checked out in the afternoon, the woman who had helped me the night before was not at the desk. A man was there instead. I mentioned what had happened and asked if anyone had found anything in my original room. He gave me the specific look of someone who has been told not to discuss something. Then he told me that the hotel had not had a night shift housekeeper for the past week. The woman who had worked that position had stopped coming in without notice. She had not returned her master key set. He said it like it was a straightforward logistical problem. Like the 2 facts, missing housekeeper with active master keys, guest reporting breathing in a closet at midnight, existed in separate categories that did not require him to connect them. I stood at the front desk for a moment processing this. Then I asked him directly, "Do you think those 2 things are related?" He said he couldn't speak to that. I drove home with the windows down and the radio up. I thought about the breathing, the specific quality of it, controlled and deliberate, the kind of breathing that takes effort to maintain. The breathing of someone in a small space who has been there for a while and has learned how to exist in it quietly. I thought about the closet door and the 4 inches of movement from where I had left it. I think about the guests who stayed in that hotel after I checked out. Whether they checked the closet when they arrived. Whether the woman who had stopped coming in had been found by then, or whether she was still somewhere in that building with keys that opened every door. I check closets differently now. Not just visually, I step inside and pull the door to its closed position and check whether it moves freely, whether the space inside is as empty as it looks from the outside. My friends think this is an unusual habit. I think about the breathing stopping the moment the flashlight hit the door. That's not what a draft does. That's not what the air conditioner does. That's what a person does. My name is Ada, and I need to tell you up front that what I am about to describe does not have an explanation that I am fully comfortable with. I have tried to find one. I have gone back through everything that happened that night many times, and I have not found a version of events that accounts for all the details without leaving at least one piece that does not fit. I was 24 and working as a house person at a mid-sized hotel, a position that is part maintenance, part housekeeping support, part front desk assistance depending on what the night required. I had worked at the hotel for 8 months at the time this happened. I knew the building well. I knew which rooms the ice machine serviced and how the elevator sounded when it was between floors and where the draft came from in the second floor hallway in winter. I knew this building the way you know a place you have spent a significant portion of your waking hours in. That familiarity is part of what made the night so difficult to dismiss. It was a Wednesday in summer. Dead night for the hotel, no arrivals expected, most of the building occupied by long-term business guests who were asleep by 10. I was on shift with a new front desk employee named Brianna who I had been covering for since she started 3 weeks earlier. The night was quiet in the way that Wednesday nights in a business hotel in summer are quiet. We chatted, she handled the occasional phone call, I did my rounds. My rounds included the pool. The hotel's pool was in a separate structure attached to the main building by a covered walkway, a small indoor pool with a storage room off the deck where we kept towels, cleaning supplies, and the maintenance chemicals. Access required a key, which guests obtained by filling out a form at the front desk and which employees accessed with their master key. On a dead Wednesday night, there was no reason for anyone to be in the pool. I opened the pool room at approximately 8:45 p.m. to restock towels. The pool area was empty and dark except for the underwater lights, which were on a timer. I went to the storage room, opened it, and was crouching down to pick up a stack of towels from the lower shelf when I heard something hit the water. The sound was specific, a heavy splash, not a drip, not a pump cycling. Something dropped into the pool. I came out of the storage room quickly. The lifesaver ring that had been on the hook by the deep end was floating in the center of the pool. The pool was otherwise empty. The access door was closed. I was alone in the room. I stood at the edge of the pool and looked at the lifesaver. There is no mechanism by which a lifesaver mounted on a wall hook enters the water without being thrown. The hook was 4 feet from the pool edge, angled away from the water. It could not have fallen in. It would have fallen to the deck. I retrieved it, replaced it on the hook, restocked the towels, and left. I told Brianna what had happened. She looked at me with the expression that new employees use when they're trying to decide whether a colleague is joking. I told her I was not joking. We moved on. The night continued without incident for the next hour. At 9:30 I received a maintenance slip for room 324, a toilet issue. I went upstairs with my master key. Room 324 was unoccupied until Friday. I let myself in and turned on the bathroom light and started working on the toilet. The room was standard, 2 beds, desk, television, a window facing the parking lot. I had been in this specific room several times for various maintenance tasks. I knew its layout. I was working on the toilet tank when the temperature dropped. I want to describe this precisely because it is the detail that I have the most difficulty accounting for rationally. It was not a gradual change, not the slow shift that happens when a vent kicks on or a window is cracked. It was immediate. I was kneeling in front of the toilet and the air in the room changed in a way that I felt on my arms before I was consciously aware of it. My arm hair rose. The temperature returned to normal within approximately 20 seconds, just as suddenly as it had changed. I checked the thermostat in the room. It read 68 degrees, which was consistent with the building's summer setting and consistent with what the room had felt like when I entered. I could not explain what had just happened. I have worked in that building for 8 months. I know the HVAC system. There is nothing in its normal operation that accounts for what I felt. I noted it, filed it, and went back to the toilet. The toilet fixed itself, the flapper receded, and the tank refilled normally. I was replacing the lid when I heard a loud thump from the room behind me. I came out of the bathroom and turned toward the beds. The room phone on the nightstand was off its cradle, dangling by its cord. This was not unusual in itself. The housekeeping staff sometimes knocked phones off tables without noticing. What was unusual was that the phone had been on its cradle when I walked in. I had looked at the nightstand when I entered the room out of habit, the same inventory I do in every room I enter. The phone had been seated. I registered the phone. And then past it, in the far corner of the room between the second bed and the wall, I saw something that I am going to describe as accurately as I am able to. A figure. Tall. Standing completely still in the corner of the dim room. I could not see features, no face, no hands, no clothing detail. It was a shape. A human-shaped darkness in a corner that had been empty when I walked in a room that no one had entered since I had let myself in with my master key and I had confirmed was empty on entry. It did not move immediately. I stood in the bathroom doorway looking at it and it stood in the corner, and I am going to be honest with you and tell you that what I felt was not the manageable fear of a recognized threat. It was something more fundamental than that. The kind of fear that arrives before the brain has formed a coherent understanding of what it is responding to. Then it moved. I cannot tell you which part of it moved. I can tell you that it moved and I was through the room door and into the hallway before I had made a conscious decision to move. I went downstairs to Brianna at the front desk. I told her I was punching out. She asked if I was okay. I said I had to go. I drove home. I have thought about this many times. The pool incident, the lifesaver that cannot have entered the water on its own. The temperature drop that has no mechanical explanation. The phone that was on its cradle when I entered and off it when I exited the bathroom. The figure in the corner. I can account for any one of these individually with an explanation I am not fully satisfied with. I cannot account for all 4 of them together. I went back to the hotel the following week. I have worked there since. Nothing has happened to me in that building in the months since that night. I do not go into room 324 alone anymore. There is no policy that says I cannot. I simply do not do it. Brianna asked me once what had actually happened that night. I told her the pool story, the lifesaver, and left it there. Some things are harder to explain when someone is looking at you. Some things are easier to carry quietly. I still check behind me in dim rooms. Every room, every time. Not always consciously. My hand just moves toward the light switch before the rest of me has decided to turn it on. Some habits form fast when they need to.